This is a Moza Racing R5. It's a brand new mini direct drive wheelbase with 5 Nm of power, 5.5 to be exact according to the specs, and it's sold as a complete kit along with a unique ES steering wheel, table clamp and SRP Lite pedals. The price for this bundle, Moza says, is $599 if you buy direct from them, but regional dealers are also worth considering for lower shipping and import costs. Moza products are so far mainly PC focused, and as a PC racer that's my focus too, but check the video description for information on console support should it ever become official. Here's a quick summary if you're in a rush. The steering wheel is nice and solid and a good size, I like it. The force feedback of the wheelbase is very smooth and decently strong, definitely just enough to make it feel like you're actually driving something, not just a toy. The table clamp is rock solid. Pedals are built really well and do the job, but the simplistic brake isn't good enough for hardcore simulators and is the weakest element of the kit. If you're buying this to play the F1 game or other semi-simulators, then you should be happy, but if you're buying this to get into iRacing or ACC, then you may be better off skipping the R5 altogether and going for the R9 instead. Overall though, the R5 kit seems like a great entry-level racing setup, and if I was shopping for a younger sim racer's first steering wheel especially, this would definitely cut it nicely. But it's also a decent upgrade from a Logitech wheel as well. Cool, so before I carry on with the rest, let it be known, Moza sent me this R5 bundle to test free of charge, as I loved the Moza R9 I bought and couldn't say no to testing the R5 when offered. Some of the links I've provided in the description may earn me a commission if you buy through them at no extra cost to you. Thank you to everyone using my links in previous videos as well, it makes a big difference. Be assured, my regular full-time day job ensures I stay fed, so I can just tell you exactly how I feel. Moza has no input or say in what's in this video. Anyway, let's take a look. That $600 price range puts it in the upper end of the lower end. It's a sort of money where you don't want to go mad, but you also don't want a pile of plastic that makes you wish you'd never bothered. I'll be upfront about it, if you know you want to get into racing, then the sweet spot to aim for would be a Moza R9 or Fanatec DD Pro. It wouldn't necessarily be the R5, but both of those options would cost hundreds more than this, and there is always a need for a cheaper stepping stone that still gives you a good idea of what lies ahead, something nicely representative without being crazy money that you can always upgrade from if you end up addicted to racing. In my eyes, that upper entry level brief is well met by the R5, with good build quality, materials and capability. Though it does have some weak points, namely that brake pedal, the rest is well up to the task and gives you a good idea of what modern direct drive force feedback is all about. If you opt for this over a cheaper Logitech wheel for example, you'll definitely have a different experience. When you open the box, the steering wheel is the first thing to greet you. It's a one-piece item with a nice mature design overall, fairly muted with no offensive design choices, thank goodness. The wheel is wrapped in vinyl which is well finished. Shifters are metal with a neutral click and feel, not too loud but not exactly quiet either. The buttons all feel fine, they remind me very much of a typical console controller, nice positive little pop when you press them. The wheel is a nice weight as well, and some of that will be down to the presence of a full metal quick release, the same quality as what you will find on the rest of Moza's hardware, just a slimmer collar. Overall this wheel feels well finished and I'm sure you're going to think the same. Next out of the box is the R5 wheelbase, and it's so small. Put this side by side with the R9 and you'll see that it should be called the Moza Sawn-Off, with a shorter body and steering column. The R9 was already small, this is pushing it even further. At this rate, if Moza was to one day make an R3, they'll probably be able to post it through your letterbox. Table clamp is up next, and it's an all metal construction with a fixed tilt angle and 2 simple hand turn screw clamps, and a hard foam liner on the top jaw to avoid scratching or damaging your desk. The jaws are pretty large, presumably to try and accommodate every desk type imaginable. Finally, you'll see the pedals, the SRP Lites. The throttle and brake are just bolted in far apart for packaging purposes, and you can change their positioning freely, which I'll be doing. The SRP Lites are, as the name suggests, a slimmed down version of the standard SRP pedals, which I love by the way. These, however, connect directly to the R5 wheelbase via a cable instead of connecting directly to your PC, which could be a clue of future console compatibility. Who knows, I'm just guessing, but I feel like that could be the idea behind doing this. They're made to the same build standard as the full SRP pedals, all metal, anodized black from top to toe, horizontally adjustable pedals, and have rubber backstops for noise reduction just like the full SRP pedals. The SRP Lites have a very basic brake pedal though, with no load cell and nothing beyond a simple spring to offer proper resistance. On the first impression, I felt that if anything was going to limit the R5 bundle in any way, it's probably going to be this brake pedal. The in-hand feeling of everything in the box is good though. Loads of metal, loads of solid components cold to the touch, weighty and well finished. You definitely won't get plastic regret, and you shouldn't feel like you've been hard done by. Many other things in life cost just as much without feeling anywhere near as substantial, so good job so far. Let's press on. Most of you will be employing the table clamp that comes with this bundle, even if you have a cockpit, because the bolt pattern underneath the R5 is non-standard. You won't be able to use all 4 bolt holes on most existing wheel decks, only the front 2 will line up. But this isn't much of an issue. The supply clamp is rock solid. If you manage to pull this thing off its anchors, then you're taking a chunk of desk with it, if you know what I mean. The clamp does underhang by a couple of inches though, so beware of potential knee bashage if your desk is really low. Make sure you have reasonable clearance, especially if your desk is a few inches thick, because those hand screws will protrude downwards even more for you if it is. So here's me cosplaying as me from 2019, driving on a desk, because I wouldn't have had a full cockpit like this at the point that I would have bought an R5. So I'm taking myself back to simpler times and using it as nature intended. With that heavy duty clamp, the wheel is solid as a rock as expected. The pedals, much like the Fanatec CSL pedals they shadow, are not ideal when used freestanding like this. They do work reasonably well to be fair, but by way of wiggle physics they will slowly creep forward millimetre by millimetre, so you'll need something behind them to stop them moving over time. Overall though, it does legitimately play nicely with a desk, but a wheel stand or a cockpit will still be of great benefit to you. The majority of my seat time is spent in iRacing, so I know it well, and the R5's force feedback is pretty good there. It's definitely strong enough to give the cars you're driving weight and purpose. In ACC2, the feedback is lively, nice and detailed, and the signature rippling over curbs and rumble strips is present to a good degree. This may be a baby direct drive, but it still has that agile feedback that simply can't be done as well by any other mechanism. In F122, the feedback is pretty lively as well, definitely entertaining, and still gives you that buzz and kick as you scrape and hook the exit curbs. The R5 Wheelbase has a fair share of strength, and the smallish 11-inch diameter of the ES steering wheel avoids masking that power with a big heavy wheel. The difference in punch and power between the R5 and the more expensive R9 is huge, obviously. The R9's got nearly twice the power and it can really give you a pasting, but the R5 can still give you a little bit of a wrestle and catch you by surprise. It won't give you that feeling of hanging on for dear life, but it will do a good enough job to whisk you away into the car you're driving. At the centre of any Moza setup is the Moza Pithouse software, which is the software that ties in with all the Moza steering wheels and pedals, makes them work properly and opens up the settings for everything. This gives you loads of options to tweak the force feedback just like the higher end equipment. However, because the R5 doesn't quite have the strength of its bigger brothers, you won't be able to cook up anything too extreme. Just like finding out you've only got eggs and ham for dinner, you can whisk it up any way you want, but you're still going to end up with some variation of a ham omelette in the end. Even so, despite the lower power, you can still tweak loads of stuff, save profiles, and use the mobile app to do it all via Bluetooth if you find that more convenient. Overall, there's a lot more settings you can tweak than you usually get at this level, as that's one of the benefits of direct drive. You can make the wheel very agile and fast, or you can make it feel heavy and powerful, and everything in between. The main Achilles heel of the R5 is what's under your heel. That brake pedal on the SRP Lites is not good enough for any real serious simulators because it's too hard to be precise with it. Fine for casual games and semi-sim in-betweeners, but just not the hardcore ones. If you're an iRacing fan or an ACC addict, you will almost definitely want more than the SRP Lite can give, as whilst it's roughly drivable, your braking consistency will be all over the place and you're just going to get eaten up by the pack. But in F122, due to the somewhat forgiving nature of the game anyway, and the presence of mild assists that can take the edge off it, I found myself quite happy. I was actually having a good time. If you're using it for that, or for any soft and friendly racing game, you should be satisfied, and this was my epiphany. Out of the 3 racing titles I tested the R5 bundle with, F122 was the one that stuck out to me as the best kind of fit for the R5 out of the box. If you're dead set on iRacing or ACC, then the R5 bundle is not the best starter pack for you. The wheelbase and the wheel are pretty good, it's just that brake pedal. If you were to add the standard SRP pedals to the R5, then it would be okay, but at that point it just becomes better value for money to skip over the R5 and go for the R9 if you can stretch to it. It's worth the extra. Now the R5 is direct drive, and that usually equals smooth and quiet, and that's true here. If you're coming from a Logitech wheel especially, then the relative silence and smooth turning of the R5, much like the Fanatec CSL DD, is going to be a revelation for you. There are no clacks, clangs, whines or rattles here. There are subtle chirps of a motor when you suffer big shocks to the chassis of your car, like curb strikes, but they're only there if you're trying to hear them. Otherwise, it's a subtle, unintrusive sound in my opinion. The only real noise you'll hear from the R5 are by far the paddle shifters. The R5 doesn't have any cooling fans on board, but that's normal now for mini direct drives. It's going to run cool unless you push it excessively hard through cruel configurations. I'm talking cranking everything up to max with no remorse. I tested the R5 in F122 with purposefully brutal force feedback settings to see what it would do. And after an hour of fighting for its life, the R5 was warm to the touch, a bit like a laptop charger would be, not hot, but definitely flushed. Apparently there's a temperature sensor on board the R5 and R9 at least, which tells the force feedback to calm down a bit if it's heading towards an overheat, which is preferable to an emergency shutdown. Even so, I didn't notice any force feedback ramp down. It may have been fairly warm when I was done with it, but it wasn't slacking off. Every following session, with more sensible settings, ended with the R5 feeling basically room temperature as expected. Point is, it seemingly copes fine with being a bit warm if you wring it out. Generally speaking, the R5 feels like a baby R9 with much less power and no load cell in the brake pedal, but in many other ways, be it build quality, materials used and presentation, it's on the same level. When it could so easily have been plasticized to cut costs, they haven't gone down that road, not with this. This feels just as grown up and well put together as the R9, even if it only has around half the power. Consider the R5 a good option if you can't justify the costlier R9, but you're almost certainly going to upgrade from it. But the R5 would have played that role in getting you hooked into racing in the first place. If the R9's feedback is a punch, the R5's is more of a slap. It won't hit as hard, but you're definitely going to feel it. And that's it for now. Cheers again for watching. Let me know what you think, or if you have any questions, I'll answer to the best I can. Please remember to check the links in the description too, drop a like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and check out my other reviews and guides. Cheers again.